All right. Colin Kaepernick. He speaks. He hasn't spoken. A lot of people, if y'all not up to breast, a lot of people have been getting on him for not speaking. He actually he doesn't say much. So people don't know really where he stands. So he must have heard a lot of the scuttlebutt from a lot of the guys on these sports shows saying he never actually speaks on anything. So now he said this in honor of Thanksgiving, I guess. I realize our fight is the same fight. Colin Kaepernick makes surprise appearance at Native American Thanksgiving Day held on Alcatraz and says he knows their struggle. Oh, God, you Negroes are so confused. God. Colin Kaepernick spent the holiday at the Indigenous Peoples Sunrise Ceremony on Alcatraz Island. Listen, I don't care about these Native Americans. I don't care if they get their land back. I don't care what happens to them. They were the biggest slave traders in North America. I don't care if they don't get their land back. And I'm only speaking about the ones on the continental United States territory. I'm not speaking about the Taino Indians or none of those Indians down in South America and Central America. I'm speaking about the Indians that were on North America, the Cherokees, the Blackfoot, all of the Sioux. Man, they had more slaves than white folk. We're going to get into that in a minute. And then you got this Negro running behind them, talking about he know their plight. He obviously don't know their struggle. Their struggle was with the white man. You and this Native American ain't got nothing in common. First of all, you not him. And I'm glad these Aboriginal Negroes have kind of cleared it up. So I thought y'all Aboriginals was saying that y'all were Native Americans. Y'all saying that y'all just the Africans that was here before Columbus. Okay. Now, I don't know how y'all know that y'all are them and not the ones that came on the slave ship. Let's just say that there were some Aboriginal Africans here that came over before Columbus. How do you know you're them and not the ones that came on the slave ship? I would love to know that. But look, fine. But at least you guys are not saying that you're Native Americans, because these are a whole different race. They have a whole different blood type. You can't even get a blood transfusion from one of these mugs. You can't even get a kidney transplant from one of these people. Talking about some of you the same people. That's what they used to say. But anyway, the former San Francisco 49ers quarterback shared details to his Twitter page. He said in his speech, I realize that our fight is the same fight. No, it's not. It's not the same fight, Colin. And I'm going to show you why it's not the same fight, Colin. Okay? It's not the same fight. Now, during the slavery years, okay? During the slavery years, okay? Okay? That 5% of whites own slaves. Okay? 5% of whites. This is something that I want my white subscribers to understand. There's no guarantee that your ancestors owned slaves. You had to be wealthy and you had to have land for the slaves to work on. It was kind of like a status symbol in some cases, and in a lot of cases it was, they were the machine that, worked the farm. Since you didn't have a lot of machinery back in those days, technology, you had hundreds of slaves. So one slave owner would have 400, 500 slaves on his plantation. And him and his wife would keep all those Negroes in check with a couple slave, overseers. And them 500 niggas would be in there not, in check. But the majority of white people suffered because of slavery because there were no jobs. Only 5% of whites owned slaves. 7 to 8% of Native Americans owned slaves. Slavery among Native Americans in the United States includes slavery by Native Americans as well as slavery of Native Americans, roughly within present-day United States. Tribal territories in the slave trade range over present-day borders. Some Native American tribes held war captives as slaves prior to and during European colonization, and some Native Americans were captured and sold by others into slavery to Europeans. And a small number of tribes in the late 18th and 19th century adopted the practice of chattel property and held increasing numbers of African slaves. Okay? All right? Some Native American tribes owned slaves. The 5 civilized tribes implemented some of these practices, which they have seen as beneficial. They were working to get along with the Americans to keep their territory. These 5 nations made the largest effort of all Native American peoples to assimilate into white society. Adoption of slavery was one of them. Okay? So they were trying to, by being one of the 5 civilized tribes, they were trying to be like white people. They, were trying to adopt, that's, now they were already selling each other. They were already, selling each other to the white man. But then they started by selling and trading you. They were the most receptive to whites' pressures to adopt European cultures. The pressures from European Americans to assimilate the economic shift of furs and deerskins and the government's continued attempts to civilize native tribes in the South led them to adopting an economy based on agriculture. Okay? Slavery itself was not a new concept to indigenous American peoples. As in inter-Native American conflict, tribes often kept prisoners of war, but these captures often replaced slain tribe members. Native American versions of slavery prior to European contact came nowhere close to fitting the European definition of slavery, as the Native Americans did not originally distinguish between groups of people based on color, but rather traditions. Okay? So they're going to try to blame this on white people. Slavery in the Indian Territory. In the 1830s, all of the civilized tribes were relocated, many of them forcibly to the Indian Territory, later the state of Oklahoma. The incident is known as the Trail of Tears, and the institution of owning enslaved Africans came with them. Of the estimated 4,500 to 5,000 blacks who formed the slave class in the Indian Territory in 1839, the great majority were in possession of the mixed bloods. Okay? So you have a long history of Native Americans keeping Africans as slaves. Okay? And they want to blame it on white people, fine. Okay? If they're going to blame it on white people and say, well, they were just trying to be like white people, fine. That's not good enough for me. I don't care if you was trying to be like Martians. Okay? don't care if you was trying to be like Martians. You sold our people into slavery. Even Ebony admitted that some Native Americans tried to enslave. These the type of Negroes that would never admit nothing like that. Because most black people want to act like they got Indian in their family, which has been proven wrong. I showed you guys let me just go ahead over here to this. Let me go to this video so I can prove you guys wrong. This is funny. Yeah, it's interesting. What do y'all think about this? Y'all feel like, okay, well, that's all right that they owned slaves and kept slaves on there because the white man tried to make them switch from selling furs and trapping furs and shooting deers, as a form of economy. The white man tried to get them to use agriculture, which is more like land-based, growing things which need slave labor. So it's really the white man's fault that they had slaves. I mean, is that a good enough an excuse for y'all?
Them and say that they're black. That's the funniest part. Find me a nigga that can go around Native Americans and say that, yeah, we the same people. They only say that shit, like, amongst each other. Like, sorry, man, these are mongoloids, man. They got dark skin. Dark skin does not mean you're black. Dark skin means that you're from around the equator.
I don't really want to show you the Waka Flocka.
To an O and blood complicated thing. Even the scientists are learning more about it every day. Okay? So some brothers standing on the corner of New York selling incense probably don't know, you know what I'm saying, who read a book while he was in prison about, you know what I'm saying?
So yeah, we're gonna get all the way into this. Colin Kaepernick has linked up
Frequent basis. Some sought to solidify alliances with Europeans throughout intermarriage. It is impossible to know the exact number of Cherokees who married Europeans during that period, but we know
Colin Kaepernick is linking
Cherokee ancestry.
Colin Kaepernick is linking up with your oppressors. Here we go. Here it is right here.
Anytime the Cherokee
A bit more than 7% of Native Americans owned slaves, okay?
7 plan involved during the 17th and 18th centuries, Cherokees encountered Europeans on a more frequent basis. Some sought to solidify alliances with Europeans throughout intermarriage. It is impossible to know the exact number of Cherokees who married Europeans during that period, but we know the Cherokees viewed intermarriage as both a diplomatic tool as well as means of incorporating European into the reciprocal bonds of kinship.
Here it goes, right here. A bit more than 7% of Cherokee families owned slaves by the 1830s. Okay? And as we talked about, 5% of whites owned slaves. So there were actually more Native Americans that owned slaves than there were whites. Now, of course, as we've seen earlier, they're blaming that on white folk because white folk made them switch from hunting and gathering type lifestyle to agriculture. But white folk, when y'all gonna hold somebody responsible for their actions? Why everybody get to blame every damn thing on y'all? At the end of the day, they still had slaves. Those were African people they were beating and selling and holding hostage for their entire lives.
She's a very white woman.
Okay? Like, if I was white, I would be tired of this, man. Like, damn, this our fault too. The fact that Native Americans sold slaves. White people, y'all gotta take that.
Good is in every Blue Diamond almond. Blue Diamond almonds, get your good going.
The Cherokee Nation, look up the Indian Treaty of 1866 and look up the Cherokee freedmen. The Cherokee freedmen were the black people. These niggas ain't gonna look it up. That part of the Cherokee Nation because the Cherokees held a lot of slaves. More slaves than even white people did. And they okay, this your Dr. Boyce Watkins. Like at least he a doctor, he a researcher, you know? You know what I mean? He never been to jail though, so can't trust him. Also worked with those who wanted to enslave black people to, they would go hunt, escape slaves and get paid money. Every slave that you brought back, you get $25. Every scalp, every time if you find them, if you couldn't bring them back, and you scalp them and cut their ears off, you got $20 for bringing it back. So they will bring back scalps of black people, chopped off ears of black people, and sell that shit and make money from that. That's what they did, yes. And they were glad to own slaves. They had, again, there was a larger percentage of members of the Cherokee Nation who owned slaves than there were white people. Dr. Boyce, we did this research. You late. So this is...
So basically, during slavery, there were more slaves, more in Native Americans who owned slaves than white folk. And they were the slave hunting class. So what would happen is white people, since, white land and Native American land was separate, the whites were constantly pushing the Native Americans further west. Slaves fleeing the whites, the Europeans in the South, would naturally run into Native American land. And what would happen is the Native Americans, the whites would pay the Native Americans $25 for each African that they brought back. Whether they brought them back or not, just the scalp, okay? Or the ears. You didn't have to bring the whole person back, just the scalp or the ears. And you would get $25 for that. So it became as anything would become. Just like you sell crack in your neighborhood. It's not the right thing to do, but once it's money involved, people lose their moral integrity. So now you got Native Americans chasing black people all around the country. If a Native American saw you and you were black, even if you were a freed man, he could get $20 for your scalp. Okay? Your scalp was worth $20. Your ears were worth $20, which is a lot of money, which is like $200, $300. Now, probably even more than that. $20 back then is probably like $1,000 now. But you know what I mean? Like, adjusted for inflation, but yeah. Okay? And this is your Dr. Boyce Watkins, okay? A researcher, not a dude who read the autobiography of Malcolm X while he was locked up and come home and know every goddamn thing. You notice them niggas, they know everything. You can't stump one of them niggas, one of them ex-jail niggas on 125th Street. You can't stump them. They know everything.
In such contrast to what many of you were probably raised on to believe that, oh yeah, the Native Americans, they're going through what you go through, and they're plight like your plight, they're your allies and all this. But I'm gonna tell you this: if you look at the history of the actions of the Cherokee Nation as it pertains to the descendants of black Cherokees, black freedmen, the descendants of black freedmen, those actions have been nothing short of despicable.
Right, and even prior to that, when African slaves were all...
You know what? I just wanted to show y'all that part about Boyce Watkins. Okay? The sound isn't very good. I hope I didn't lose y'all right there. But yeah. You know, I'm tired of black folk listening to all these pseudo-science about some great relationship with Native Americans in past times. The motherfuckers were slave owners, okay? Black slaves, red masters.
The following is a News 7 Black History Special, Black Slaves, Red Masters. Hello everyone, I'm Sam Ford. Earlier this month in our 7 Inside Reports, I took a personal journey to look at a largely unknown chapter of black history when my ancestors and thousands of other blacks were slaves, not of the whites, but of the Indians. Well, a lot of people responded who'd missed some of the segments and who wanted to know more about the subject. So today you'll see it all and more, and get your pencils. At the end we'll have not a test, but an address and phone number where you can get more information. Every summer at Tahlequah, Oklahoma, the Cherokee Indians sponsor their Trail of Tears pageant, the story of how the U.S. government robbed the so-called 5 civilized tribes of their homelands in the South and moved them by force to Oklahoma. They don't tell about the thousands of blacks the tribes brought with them, their slaves.
My mammy and pappy belonged to a part Cherokee named W.P. Thompson when I was born.
The woman reading is my sister, Elaine Ford Staton, but the words are those of our great-grandmother, Phyllis Thompson Pettit, whose Georgia-born parents were brought by the Cherokees over the trail. Johnson Thompson was Phyllis's brother.
Before that, Pappy had been owned by 3 different masters. One was the rich Joe Van, who lived down at Weber's Fall, and another was Chief Lowry of the Cherokees.
My cousin, Maurice Shepard, reading the words of his great-grandfather. The interviews were conducted 52 years ago here at Fort Gibson, Oklahoma, when both my great-grandmother, Phyllis Pettit, and her brother, Johnson Thompson, were in their 80s, part of a federal writers project. Now, both of them are buried in this cemetery. But after I read their words, I was set on a mission to find out how my family became slaves of the Indians. I learned that beginning with the administration of George Washington, it was the policy of the U.S. government to civilize the Indians by teaching them modern farming techniques.
To adopt agricultural practices that patterned after the whites, and one of those in the South was slave trade.
I don't ever talk about it very much because I think it's a very...
All these white people you see, these are $5 Indians. These are not real Indians. These are white people, okay? These are white people. These are what we call $5 Indians. Look it up. They started giving, at the turn of the century, they started giving away land to Indians. And all these white people hopped up and started saying it was Indian. None of these people will ever take an ancestry DNA test. No, you will never find anybody that's not Puerto Rican that claiming Indian blood take an ancestry DNA test. Now, I looked at maybe 10 or 15 Puerto Rican ancestry DNA tests before I did this video, and they all have Indian blood. But none of you Negroes got any Indian blood, and none of you white folk got any Indian blood. It's very rare. Just like the the study that was done, they tested 1,000 black people and ran them all across the United States from like Chicago to the East Coast, and only 4 had Native American blood. Okay? So it's very rare because Native Americans did not breed with their slaves. They were very cruel masters and they used their slaves just for work. The white man, was different. He slept with his slaves and they had babies and all that stuff. The natives were very particular about that. They did not like breeding with their slaves.
Very shameful part of Cherokee history, and so I've purposely avoided involving myself in that whole issue.
While the current chief may be ashamed, at the Cherokee Museum today are slave bills of sale, including one for 3 slaves bought in 1841 by then Principal Chief John Ross. The chief and his brother Lewis were among the biggest slaveholders in the tribe. Indeed, many of my mother, Kathleen's ancestors, the Rosses, were owned by the chief's family.
They were Southerners. They adopted Southern institutions, Southern dress, Southern black slavery.
But one characteristic they did not like was Southern greed for their land. By 1830, through wars and treaties, the 5 tribes had lost most of it. Then they were all ordered to move west to Oklahoma. 4 of the tribes left, but the Cherokees took their case to the U.S. Supreme Court and won. At least they won the lawsuit. Then the man on the $20 bill stepped in.
And President Jackson essentially told the Supreme Court, you made your ruling in favor of the Cherokees, now, try to enforce it.
As president, Andrew Jackson controlled the army, so 14,000 Cherokees and 1,600 slaves were herded to Oklahoma, some groups in winter, with about a quarter of the Indians and blacks dying along the way.
You got plenty Indians right today don't like Andrew Jackson in this area.
84-year-old Luther Scales, who describes himself as 1/4 black and 3/4 Indian, is president of the Coweta, Oklahoma Historical Society. He remembers stories his...
Now that nigga probably 3/4 black and 1/4 Indian. But yeah, it's listen, on and on and on. Y'all still ain't gonna believe it, but yeah, they held slaves, man. That was their thing. After they got, stopped doing their hunter-gatherer thing. Now, what do y'all think about that? Do y'all give them a pass because, the white man made them do it? Or do y'all hold them accountable for it? Like their actions, like, you did it, motherfucker. Like, shit, I don't care why you did it. Like, if you was a slave of a Native American and you was getting your ass whipped all day and, having to sit out in the field and pick cotton all day, would you be like, well, white people made them do it, so I guess I just gotta pick this cotton, or would you want your freedom? Or would you want your freedom? Cause I don't know. Some of y'all might be like, some of y'all might not care. I would want my freedom. I wouldn't care. I wouldn't care if the white people made them do it or not. I would want my freedom. I wouldn't want to hear about, well, white people, they made us do this, so we didn't have a choice. I would want my damn freedom. I'm looking for a certain passage in here where it talked about that y'all can go back and watch this video. It's in here somewhere. This video I did on Cam Newton. I talked about the test where they tested 1,000 black people in all different cities, descendants of slaves, and 1,000 of them, and only 4 of them had Native American blood. Okay? So back to Colin, man. How do y'all feel about Colin now that he's taking sides with the Native American? And when are we gonna get some of that casino money? Cause okay, we want reparations from white folk, right? We want reparations from white folk. But we don't want reparations from Indians when more of them own slaves. Now I know it's white people's fault and they made them do it and all that stuff, but they still own slaves and they still got casinos where they make millions, billions of dollars, and they all get like checks with $20,000 each month.
Current day American genocide and what that represents. We have a relative that's here today with us, and his name is Colin Kaepernick. And so, thank you, Colin Kaepernick, a big ode to you. I dance with these feathers now 39 years.
And these motherfuckers, they'll sit here and let this nigga do that, knowing that they own slaves, knowing this in their history books. They got all types of slave records and shit of them selling slaves, and they fought for the right to own slaves on their territory. And they'll still let this half a Negro come out there and talk about how he did that. Why is it an honor to be around some people that enslaved your people? Well, he's a confused guy. This is a biracial guy whose parents left him when he was very small, and he was raised by an older white couple in a town that was less than 1% black. And then he discovered his black heritage after he got with Nessa, who's an Arab. So this is how confused this brother is. So I gotta give him a break. His father's black, his mother's white. The father ran off before the mom had the baby. Mom said, "Okay, I can't take care of this baby." Left him, put him up for adoption. An older white couple took him, raised him with their kids in a town that was less than 1% white. 1% black. He went all his life, being like a white guy or biracial guy. Went to college, joined a black fraternity. Got a little bit into the black fraternity stuff. Then became a Black Lives Matter activist after he got engaged to an Arab woman. Because one of the biggest leaders in the Black Lives Matter is an Arab woman, who's his wife, his wife-to-be, Nessa. Okay? So he's all over the place. He's married to an Arab woman whose people are actually selling slaves right now. Nessa Diab. They're selling slaves right now in her part of the world. Her people are selling slaves right now. Like CNN just did an expose on it. There's nothing to talk about. There's nothing to say, well, you ain't got proof. Where the slave ships at? Nah. CNN did an undercover expose just the other day. They're selling slaves in Libya, Morocco, Algeria, Egypt, all over the Middle East, African slaves. This is his wife, an Arab woman, Nessa Diab. two Arab parents. This ain't no mixed black chick. This ain't no chick with this mixed. Got one, her dad was, no. This is an Arab woman. And she's a leader in the Black Lives Matter movement. What she's trying to do to get a foothold for the Muslims. She's gonna switch it. She gonna flip it. She using him. She's an agent, I think. She's a very pretty young lady, though. I give her that. She's very pretty. And she was dating his teammate Alden Smith. This guy right here. The crazy one. The one who used to wild out. One that, what did he do? Took a gun in the airport or something. She was dating this guy. And him and Collins, kind of like had the hots for her. So Collins scooped her from him. I guess when you're the quarterback, you lead the team to the Super Bowl. That's one of the perks. You get to steal your teammates' girlfriends. So he now he fighting for Native American rights. His wife to be is an Arab. He biracial. Black folk, what is wrong with y'all? Y'all need to get it together. Okay? What is going on with y'all, man? Y'all movements, man. What's good? Okay? He stole his brother's woman. And this is my thing about her. Tell me this. The same thing with French Montana. With the videos he did with French. Why is she over here talking about white folk? How evil and mean white folk are? When her people, and I'm not going to do it on this Arab slave trade. Y'all going to have to go do that on your own. I done did too many videos, but basically they castrate all the male slaves. So the African men have their penises removed, okay? And they just sell them openly, okay? It's no big deal, all right? Saudi Arabia, all over there, all right? And they just openly sell African people slaves. Why is she over here talking about how evil and mean white people are in America, the greatest country in the world? Where even if white people are bad over here, let's just say evil white people keeping us down, this is all right. Like, shit, I'm on here making videos and shit. If I was in an Arab country, this wouldn't be possible. Just wouldn't be. Black people don't do things like that in Arab country. Go watch my videos on French Montana. I did about 3 weeks ago. I'll put a link in the description box. I'll put a card in here so you can watch those videos. See how Arabs treat black people. They despise you. Why is this Arab woman over here like a major figure in the Black Lives Matter movement talking about police brutality and how mean and evil white people is? And not gonna say a word about the things, she ain't gonna say a word about the things her people do. That's my thing. She ain't gonna say a word. She gonna act like, cause she, you know what? They think niggas don't know. And most of the niggas don't know. Most of you niggas don't have a clue. Okay, I'll give you that. Most of you niggas don't have a clue. Okay? Her parents are Egyptian. She has 2 brothers. Man, Egypt in Africa. Nah, brother. Libya is in Africa. Okay? Morocco's in Africa. You guys gotta use your brain. That IQ thing doesn't. South Africa's in Africa. Didn't they have apartheid in South Africa? Wasn't South Africa run 100% by white people? You black folk ain't had 0 rights. Wasn't South Africa in Africa? Shit. Wasn't Rhodesia in Africa? They don't even know nothing about Rhodesia. God. But why is she over here? Why is she over here like she like a major figure in the Black Lives Matter movement? Why is she over here talking about white people? We need you to get your Arab people together. Okay? And making tweets calling people coons and whatnot. You don't have no license to do that. You don't have no license to talk about Ray Ray like that. You see that tweet she made about Ray Lewis? This Arab woman who people have open air slave markets right now, y'all let her call Ray Lewis a coon. Y'all let her make a joke about slavery. And I ain't gonna make her say, look, my people over there in the Arab world, we gotta stop doing these Africans like this, y'all. It's kind of messed up. Like, make a statement or something. Meanwhile, this dude meeting with Native Americans talking about some, I understand your struggle. No, the fuck you don't. We need some reparations from them damn Native Americans. We need some of that casino money. That's all I want to hear from them. If them Native Americans ain't giving us some of that casino money, then I ain't got nothing to say to y'all. But then I already did the test. All these niggas run around saying they got Native American blood. Less than 1% of them got it. And the rest, you'll never get one of these niggas to show your ancestry DNA test. That ain't Puerto Rican. That ain't from the islands. Because it's a different thing down there in the islands. It was more mixed up down there. North America was different. Them Indians was not mixing with y'all. They was trying to outcracker the white folk. So they was trying to be more white than the white folk because it was new to them. So they were even harder than the white people. Okay? It's the same thing where you get a white boy come around the hood, or a Spanish boy come around the hood, he nigga all day because it's new to him. He ain't been saying nigga since he was 2 years old. You know what I'm saying? It's a new thing to him, so he nigga all day. Same thing with them Indians. That shit was new to them, so they was just like, oh shit. They was trying to outcracker the crackers. So yeah, man, we got a lot going on here, man. Peace.